Welcome to Those Were the Days. I'm Nancy Martin, the library archivist. Welcome to part two of Peters Township Past and Present, as depicted in the scrapbooks assembled by Peters Township resident Ralph Kessler. Ralph's scrapbooks provide a wealth of visual information about Peters Township from the early 1900s until 1998. The scrapbooks, because they capture changes to Peters Township over time, provide a wonderful opportunity to create a then, later, and now comparison of certain sites in Peters. Last month, in part one of the Past and Present program, we focused on McMurray and Valley Brook roads. This month, we'll be looking at sites on Thomas and Bebout roads, as well as in Thompsonville, Donaldson's Crossroads, and Route 19. Let's start with Thomas Road. Here is an undated image of Hervey McMurray's Willow Grove farmhouse on Thomas Road, copied from Ralph's scrapbooks. In 1950, the property was owned by Chris Hodenshield. Chris served as president of the Peters Township Protective Association we talked about in last month's program. Based on information I gleaned from newspaper articles of the time, he also appears to have been very involved in the Peters Township Farm Fair. This is a colorized version of the original black and white drawing of Hervey McMurray's Willow Grove Farm that appears in Caldwell's Illustrated Combination Centennial Atlas of Washington County, PA from 1876. If you turned onto Thomas Road from McMurray Road, Willow Grove Farm was just on your left. The house was torn down to make way for a housing plan. Simmons Road, on which Simmons Farm is located, is accessed via Thomas Road. Ralph took this image of Simmons Farm in the fall of 1992. What struck me about the picture is the second floor dormers that are visible from the front of the farm store. In this more recent photo taken from Simmons Farm's Facebook page, the store appears wider than it was in 1992, and the second floor dormers are gone. The house at 149 Thomas Road, McMurray, seen here, was built by Howard and Edna Kunkel in 1944. Howard is pictured on the right of the slide. Howard served as township supervisor in Peters and was a member of the Peters Township Volunteer Fire Department. The Kunkels lived at 149 Thomas Road until 1971, when they sold the house to Ralph and Marguerite Kessler. This is what the house looked like while the Kesslers lived in it. Ralph and Marguerite lived at 149 Thomas from 1971 until 1988, when they bought a house on Brandywine Drive. Here's a snowy view of 150 Thomas Road, taken in 1939. The Douglas family lived here. And here is the same property photographed by Ralph 42 years later in 1981. According to Ralph's label, Walter and Elizabeth Long purchased the property from the Douglas family and built the one-story ranch house that's partially visible on the left behind the trees in 1957. I've been told that the Long's daughter was afflicted with polio, which caused them to construct this more accessible home for her. 205 Thomas Road once belonged to Milton Douglas. Milton, who served as chief of the Peters Township Volunteer Fire Department, passed away in 1975. This photograph was taken by Ralph in 1994, and I see there's a firefighter standing on the porch roof and a fire truck parked in the driveway. This photo was taken prior to a controlled burn of the house, taking place in 1994. And here is the Lutz farm on Thomas Road as it appeared in 1983 when photographed by Ralph. Before it was the Lutz farm, the farm actually belonged to William McMurray, Hervey's older brother. The farm was known as Locust Grove Farm and was located on the right side of Thomas Road after the Crossroads Church of Christ and before Johnston Road. I feel as if this image captures the story of Peters Township that began in the 1950s and continues today. The Peters Township farms of the past, here the Lutz farm, being encroached upon by the housing plans of the present. In this 1990 photograph of Ralph's, you can see the housing plan on the top of the hill encroaching on the rear of the Lutz farm. And now the site of the farm itself is being developed. A new housing plan, known as Heartland Homes at Lutz Farms, now occupies the land belonging to the former farm. Next, we'll make a quick stop on Johnston Road. John M. McMurray, seen here in his 1953 Peters Township High School senior photo, and his wife Geraldine lived in this house at 191 Johnston Road until 2001. John was born in 1935 and passed away in 2022. I've been told the current owners of the house have restored it beautifully and are raising Highland cattle on the land. And another quick stop in Hackett. I did an entire program about the village of Hackett, which I don't wish to repeat here, but I did come across this image taken by Ralph in Hackett in 1986. And here's a close-up of the house's distinctively patterned insel brick siding. This was the School family home on Venetia Road in Hackett. Compare Ralph's 1986 photograph with a more current image of the house taken from Google Earth. You can see that all of the insel brick has now been removed from the front of the house. Other than that, it doesn't appear much different. And here we have Valentine and Anna School posing at the rear corner of Valentine's parents' home in 1932. And now on to Bebout Road. The image at the top of the slide is a 1968 photo that appeared in the Daily Notes newspaper out of Canonsburg. It documents the conversion of the former Lafferty Meat Locker building at the corner of Sugar Camp and Bebout Roads into Peters Township Volunteer Fire Department's Fire Station Number 2. According to Ralph's label from his scrapbook, the lower photo is of the completed station taken in 1973. And here is the station as it looks today. Further down Bebout Road was the township's first purpose-built high school, which opened in 1904. One of Ralph's scrapbooks includes this image of the school that served the township until 1929. Ralph took this photo in 1986, long after the conversion of the former school into a private residence. I appreciate the perspective this 1986 photo offers, which Ralph seems to remember was taken from atop the Montour Railroad overpass over Bebout Road. In it, you can see how the front bell tower section of the school was removed and that the house retains the shape of the main body of the old school. As of April 2026, the property is about to be offered for sale. On to the Thompsonville neighborhood of Peters Township. Ralph took this picture of the Round Hotel on Thompsonville's Camp Lane in 1985. You can still see the Round Hotel bar sign on the left of the building. Elmer Schultz, Beverly School's dad, built and operated the Round Hotel. It opened in the early 1950s. The family lived in rooms up above. Here's a photograph of Elmer and another man constructing the hotel in the late 1940s. The bottom image, taken from Google Earth, shows that 40 years after Ralph's 1985 photograph, the former hotel, although refaced, retains its original round shape and numerous windows. Beverly tells me the building has this unique shape because it hugs the property line. Ralph included this 1980 image of the former Thompsonville post office in one of his scrapbooks. The post office operated from 1843 until 1900. The building, which still stands today, currently serves as a storage shed and is painted green. On the left is an advertisement for the Classroom restaurant, which was located in the former 1907 Thompsonville schoolhouse, taken from one of Ralph's scrapbooks. On the right is a picture of one of the slate menus marking the restaurant's 15th anniversary that Vivian Harbison was kind enough to donate to the archives in 2025. Arlecchino's Italian restaurant now occupies the former school. And now to the crossroads. Ralph snapped this picture of the Crest Theater and Crossroads Court in 1984. The Big Chill was playing, and all seats cost $1.75. The top image on this slide captures the current look of the same space as seen on Google Earth. You can compare it with Ralph's 1984 image below. This was also the area of the mall that housed the shopping center school that Laurel Fosbaugh attended as a student in the 1960s while waiting for the new Pleasant Valley School to be completed. Everyone has told me a lot about Catania's supermarket, but I'd never seen an image of it until I came across this 1975 brochure in one of Ralph's scrapbooks. And then I came across this photograph from the Liebarger family papers. It shows Catania's around 1985. I've talked before about how Sam Liebarger's photographs provide us with a valuable visual record of life in Peters Township. Ralph's scrapbooks serve the exact same purpose. The site of Catania's is now occupied by the strip mall that houses Century Sports and Urbanovich Jewelers. I'll be concluding today with a discussion of some sites along Route 19 in Peters Township. Here we have Ralph's 1984 photograph of the Sam McDowell sheep farm, which is now the site of McDowell Shops. And here is local artist Bob Chamberlain's painting of the S.M. McDowell barn, which the Archives is lucky enough to have in its holdings. The painting is one of a series of historical paintings of Peters Township sites that Bob created. The series also includes paintings of the McMurray Grist Mill, the 1904, Peters Township High School, the last run of the trolley, and McConaughey's General Store. Bob Chamberlain also designed the Peters Township Arrowhead logo at the time of the bicentennial in 1976 and was one of the participants in the library's oral history project back in the early 2000s. Bob was the owner of Chamberlain Sign Advertising, a picture of which appears in Ralph's scrapbooks. It can be seen here on the right in Ralph's 1986 photograph of the McMurray Supply Company building on Valley Brook Road. And here is a recent photograph of the McDowell shops that now occupy the site of the former McDowell sheep farm. And this is a close-up of the McDowell farmhouse taken by Ralph in 1985. And here is a photo of the house on fire. About a year ago, when I knew far less about the history of the township than I do now, I had talked about this picture of a controlled burn by the Peters Township Volunteer Fire Department, which actually is part of the Donaldson family papers. At the time, neither I nor any of the people in my program could identify the house. Turns out it's the McDowell farmhouse. I love solving an archival mystery, even one as small as this. The top photograph is of the old Southern restaurant and saloon taken by Ralph in 1983. Below it is an image of the same building, which now houses Pizzazz Italian Restaurant, taken from Google Earth. I also found this image of Sweet King in one of Ralph's scrapbooks. It stood where Center Church Road meets Route 19 and was similar to a Dairy Queen. This photo of Dottori's Pizza was taken by Ralph in 1986. Tom McMurray tells me that the pizza shop replaced Sweet King on Washington Road. And here is the Locust Grove Motel as it looked in 1984. When I searched the Observer Reporter newspaper database, I learned that the police were often being called to the motel during the 1980s. I find it interesting that the motel bears the same name as William McMurray's Thomas Road Farm, later known as Lutz Farm. This barn stood at the intersection of Route 19 and Waterdam Road and was photographed by Ralph in 1988. I've been told it formed part of the Boone Farm. Based on the signage on the barn, the land was being auctioned off. The barn was located where Jersey Mike's currently sits, part of the Waterdam Center. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you to Ralph for compiling these scrapbooks and for being such a dedicated documentarian of the township. And thank you to Ralph for donating them to the archives so that they could be shared with the entire community.